There's an endless debate in pickleball of whether you should go for harder, riskier serves, or if you should just try to stay consistent. To settle this, I think that every player should have the ability to throw in a hard serve when they need to. A few years ago in pickleball, someone might have told you, you don't need to serve hard, just make it in. It's not worth it. But as you probably know, hard serves can actually be really effective, especially at the 3-0 to 4-0 level. In fact, if you aren't maximizing your serve, you could be making everything else in your game harder. Today, I'm gonna show you all the specifics on how to get more power, more spin, more depth, and more consistency. The serve is the #1 determinant to how easy your third shot will be. So the better you hit your serve, the easier it will be to score. Today, we're gonna go over the 4 main components to improve your serve. But first, I want to address something. What you need to be aware of is that it's not worth going for faster, harder, deeper serves if this is going to make your consistency drop a lot, right? So obviously, if we're going for a little bit more risky serves, our consistency might go down a little, but if it's going from 10 out of 10 serves in to 5 out of 10 serves in, it's not worth it, right? So at the end of this video, I'm going to go over how to maintain your consistency with more power, more spin, more depth, so stay tuned. To start, let's talk about getting more power. While power is not the only thing to consider when making your serve better, it definitely helps. Assuming you have the right technique, your power is going to come from what's called the kinetic chain. The kinetic chain is the chain reaction that we use in our body to get power. Okay, so there's 3 main parts to the kinetic chain on our serve in pickleball. To start, we're worried about our arm, okay? So whenever you're hitting a ball, like a drive, a forehand drive, or a serve, you want to have a loose arm so that your arm essentially turns into a whip, right? If I'm really stiff, I can't get my hand and my paddle to move that quickly, okay? So the first part of the kinetic chain is our arm, okay? And what we do is what's called the loop. So while we have a loose arm here, okay, if you watch any pro, they probably do this on their serve. We're gonna start up a little bit higher, like this. As we take our paddle back for our serve, we're going to drop it and use the momentum to get power. So it looks like this. Okay, that's called the loop. The next part of the kinetic chain is our rotation. So as we're doing the loop like this, we're making like a C shape with our hand. We're actually going to start rotating our shoulders as we're going forward, okay? So the rotation is actually the #1 thing that gives us power. So this is the most important part, and probably also the most overlooked part of the serve. So we start off with that loop, and as we start to accelerate forward, we're rotating like we do on a golf swing. Okay, so by the time that we're actually making contact with the ball around here, we should be facing the court a lot more, okay? So this is gonna come from the hips and shoulder rotation. The last part of the kinetic chain is that we actually wanna carry our weight and our paddle forward after we hit the ball, okay? So if we just suddenly stop right when we make contact, we're not gonna get that much power, and it's also gonna reduce our control, okay? So after you hit the ball, you're actually gonna continue to carry your weight forward, and you're gonna finish with your paddle around here, okay? So put that all together and it looks like this, right? So odds are, guys, you aren't doing all 3 of these wrong. If you have an issue with power, you're probably doing 1 out of these 3 wrong. So what I'd do is I'd go experiment, try each one, maybe focus more on your loop, maybe focus more on your rotation, and focus more on the follow through and getting your weight into the ball. And you'll probably find that focusing on one gives you a lot more power. I think for most people, the #1 though is going to be that rotation. I see a lot of players that are sort of arming the ball, and you actually get a lot of your power from rotating your shoulders and hips. While power is important, the most essential aspect to improving your serve is more depth. Before we get into that though, make sure to subscribe, because moving forward, we're gonna be releasing a ton of awesome tutorials that'll help you get to the next level. As I always say, if you wanna get better, you have to make sure that you're consistently studying the game. Because when you play, you wanna feel like I'm in your ear telling you what to do. It's always important to be learning new tips and strategies that you can try to implement in your game. So subscribe if you're really looking to improve fast. So getting more depth in your serve is the #1 way to get more free points and just make it more difficult for your opponents. So when I'm talking about getting more depth, I'm talking about how far you're hitting the serve in the box, okay? So theoretically, the best place to hit it would be on the back line, right? But obviously it's a little risky, so usually when we're talking about depth, you wanna be aiming for the back third of the box, okay? So if we're aiming for the very back line, there's a good chance we're gonna miss it long. So you wanna try to just get it for like the back third of the box around here. But how do you get more depth? That's the question. So depth comes from a mix of power and height, right? So theoretically, if I hit the ball really hard, it's gonna go deep, right? But it's kind of difficult to hit the ball that hard if it's low to where it goes deep. So generally, the best way to get more depth is actually to add a little bit of height to your serve. How high should you hit it though? I think that the right height over the net is about 2 to 3 feet over the net. So if I'm hitting the ball here, okay, even if it's really hard, what are the odds that it's gonna go deep, right? It's probably gonna drop and land somewhere in the middle of the box, which actually isn't that difficult for someone to return, right? Because they have a lot of time after the ball bounces, right? And the ball slows down a lot after it bounces. So if I take that and bring it up here, however, then we're gonna be seeing a lot deeper of a serve, right? Especially if we have that power too. I don't think you need to be getting this high, right? Because if you're hitting it this high and you hit it hard, it's probably gonna sail out. But I think the golden area is right around here, 2 to 3 feet over the net. So now I'm gonna show you some examples of this. So on this first serve, I'm gonna go hard, but I'm gonna hit it pretty low. We'll see how deep it goes. Right, so that was relatively hard. It wasn't as hard as I could hit it. It was pretty low over the net. The ball landed around right here, right? And most players probably can't serve as hard as I can. And I served that pretty hard and literally landed in the middle of the court around here. That's not a very difficult serve for anyone to return, okay? I'm gonna hit the exact same speed now. This is about 70% of my normal power. And I'm gonna go higher and we're gonna see what happens. So that serve, and honestly it might have been a little slower, but because I hit it higher, the ball was actually very close to the back line. And that's a way more difficult serve for anyone to return. So just by raising your height a little bit, you can get the ball a lot deeper and it just makes things tougher on your opponent. So if you struggle at all to get depth in your serve, just play around a little bit with the power and the height, and I guarantee if you can get a little bit deeper, it's just gonna be so much easier to win points on your serve. Now though, I wanna talk about spin. So when we're thinking about spin on our serve in pickleball, the number one spin that we're always considering is top spin, okay? The other spin that we can use is more of a side spin, which a lot of people call the screwball. Top spin is definitely the number one spin though that we're gonna consider. So now I'm gonna show you how to get top spin. Top spin is when the ball is spinning away from you, okay? So the ball is spinning over the top, and when you do this, it actually makes the ball drop quicker. So it gives the ball more of an arc, okay? So when you get top spin, you can hit the ball a lot harder and it'll drop faster without sailing long. To get top spin, all you need to do is make sure that your paddle is moving up and down as it's going forward. Because right when I go up and down, I roll the ball away from me, top spin, okay? So this motion here, this is called the brush. And this goes back a little bit to our kinetic chain. So part of our kinetic chain is going to be, remember our loose whippy arm? When we're going forward, at this point, we're gonna start lifting, okay? So we're not just gonna go straight through the ball. We're actually gonna be loose, drop under the ball a little bit, and then come up like this. So you put that all together, then we can get some topspin, and it gives that ball that nice arc. One thing I'll say though, is that after a certain point with topspin, it's not really worth going for more. So if you're hitting your serve like this, right, I'm getting a pretty good amount of topspin there, going for more topspin isn't really gonna do that much. My paddle can only create so much spin on the ball. So once you're getting a pretty good amount of topspin, you don't really need to go for more. Just make sure that your consistency is high and you can focus on your depth and power. Spin is awesome though because it can throw your opponents off and it lets you just mix things up better. That said though, it's the combination of power, depth, and spin that will make your serve really deadly. As I said in the beginning of the video though, it's not worth adding these on if they reduce your consistency. So how do we stay consistent when going for bigger serves? So when we're thinking about consistency, you want to try to get at least 9 out of every 10 serves in, right? If we're getting 5 out of 10 serves in, that's not going to work. We're going to be losing way too many points because of our consistency, and even if we're going hard, it's not going to matter, right? So how do we hit harder, deeper, and spinnier serves while still getting 9 out of every 10 in? The first thing I like to consider is how good my serve is feeling that day. So whenever I come out to play, right, every shot's going to feel a little bit different. You're never just going to play the same level every day. You'll have good days and bad days, right? And you can isolate good days and bad days to particular shots, right? Some days you'll have really good reactions on your volleys. Other days you'll feel like you can't win a single hands battle. The serve is the same way. So every time you come out to play, you should try to figure out whether or not your serve feels good or bad or in the middle, right? Because if it feels good, it'll probably be the type of day where you can go for harder serves and be a little bit riskier without reducing your consistency. But if you're having a bad day on your serve, you might just need to lower the pace, right? Slow things down until you start to get your rhythm back. Then you can start going bigger. But what you don't want to do is come out not feeling good. Maybe you didn't warm up your serve enough. Go play a game, start going for, big serves, and then you're missing left and right. That's what we need to avoid. So how your serve feels is probably the #1 determinant to how big you should go while maintaining your consistency. Another thing to consider is that you should only go for big serves against players where it'll pay off, right? So if you're playing someone that has an insanely good return, and no matter what you throw at them, they get the return nice and deep every single time, it's probably not worth going for the back line. So if I'm playing Ben Johns and I'm hitting really hard deep serves, and no matter what I do, he's just getting a nice, perfectly deep return every time, there's not really any point for me to keep going big and hard if that's gonna reduce my consistency. So in that situation, I'll probably reduce my power a little bit and increase my height and just go for deeper serves that don't make it too easy on him, but that guarantee my consistency. Because I don't want to risk missing serves for no reason if he's going to make it in anyways. On the other hand, if you're maybe playing someone that's lower in level, or maybe they're actually a great player, but their return's their worst shot. A lot of people just have bad returns, right? That's where you can afford to go for more risky, harder serves because you're going to get a lot of free points, short returns, which will make everything easy, right? So if you're playing someone and they're missing your serves, then you can say, okay, they're already missing, maybe I go a little bigger and get some more free points, right? The risk has to be worth the reward, okay? If you're someone that struggles with your consistency, and maybe you're a newer player and you're just getting into it, or maybe your serve's just not your best shot, the two best ways to increase your consistency on a technical level are to manage your toss and to increase your margin for error. When we're thinking about our toss, the number one way to have a bad toss in pickleball is by throwing it up like this, similar to how we do in tennis. This is a recipe for the ball flying all over the place. Might have to chase it, might end up being too close to us, too far out in front. It's not good, okay? So when you're tossing the ball in pickleball, the best way that I like to do it is to face my hand down like this and to simply release it when my paddle gets there, right? So the ball spends very little time in the air and there's not that much that can go wrong. So if you're someone that struggles with your toss, you can try this and this could be the solution, right? Just put it right where you want to hit the ball. I'm setting the ball right where I'm going to make contact with it. And I'm just swinging straight through. Looking at margin for error, all this means is we're hitting our shots farther away from the lines and a little bit higher over the net. If I'm aiming every serve really close to the line, eventually I'm gonna accidentally hit it on the wrong side of the line, right? That's just how it works. And if I'm hitting it really low over the net, eventually I'm gonna mess up a little bit and it'll go in the net. So if I just give myself some margin for error, a little bit of a buffer, then my consistency is just gonna go up. You never wanna be aiming within a few feet of the net or the lines, okay? So if you're really struggling with your consistency, you can just aim for the center of the box a few feet over the net. You're probably gonna make your serve in every single time. So if you can implement all the stuff we just went over, your serve is gonna get so much better. I went through a lot of tips though, so I would try to focus on 2 or 3 of the main things that you wanna implement into your game, and that should be great. And if you wanna learn 10 tips that I wish I knew earlier, watch this.